Alrighty, hoseheads, here we go for my final thoughts. Now, before we get started, I just want to mention that there are definitely a lot of natural improvements that we kind of take for granted with a lot of our more modern games that are missing from here, and I think it really would have helped with the experience overall. We'll get into that as I go. Alright, let's get started, eh?
First up, the good.
So one of the first things I noticed was the weird thing with the LNR for turning. Like, that's an odd way to do it. But once I went into the customization menu just to tinker around with it and see if I could fix it, it was easily fixable because there were so many customization options. It was glorious. There's probably more in this version because this was the Steam version, not like the original Xbox version, but I would imagine it still had quite an extensive list of customization tools in there, which is very, very welcome. So the combat in this game was quite a lot of fun. It had this whole rock, paper, scissors vibe to it, and it reminded me a lot of The Witcher, how you had your different swords and your magics and your fist attacks, and swapping between them, it was stronger against certain enemies or weaker against others, and that whole play within the combat was a lot of fun. It added a layer of complexity and a layer of enjoyment along with it, which was great because the leveling in this game was phenomenal. There were so many different moves you could learn, and some of them were hidden, and if you didn't go out of your way, you might miss some. And then once you got them, you could strengthen each one by spending points in it, and you could make them stronger or faster or use less of your resources. It really made you actually have to think ahead and not just blow your points because it doesn't matter, you're going to fill the board out anyway. And it also had that good-bad meter in there, so depending on how you made your choices throughout the game, you could be a hero or a villain, I'm guessing. Sort of Fable-esque. It was a really nice touch. I like that they added that in. More games need to do that. Another nice touch that they had was some of the characters in this game would speak Old Tongue. I don't know if they were actually speaking words that made sense, because some of the phrases sounded like they were just repeating the same thing over and over, but it was really neat that they added that level in. And now this is something I put in both the good and the bad, and I'll explain why as I go, is you can save anywhere. That is so good. I hate only being able to save at specified locations because sometimes they're few and far between and you may miss something, or you might want to reload a save so you could redo one of your choices that you made, because the choices do make a difference in this game. And it's really nice that this game speaks almost all the way through, and it's pretty decent voice acting too. They have a lot of emotion that they're conveying, and it draws you into their stories instead of just reading through and clicking through, which I still ended up doing, but whatever. The flying levels, they were a nice touch. Not something I was expecting coming into this game. Seeing how complex and in-depth all the other things were about it, I didn't think they would be adding another mini-game style thing on top of it. It's just unfortunate it wasn't longer, because I was really starting to enjoy it each time the level ended. And during the combat, the enemies would drop these little orbs that would refill one of your 3 meters. And the really nice thing about that is they didn't disappear. In a lot of games, they'll just disappear after a certain amount of time, but even when the combat was over and you were back into your normal stance, the orbs would remain and you could go in and just collect them afterwards to refill your bars. Because another good thing about this game is there isn't this auto regen that takes the stakes out of everything you do. That's one of those hand-holding moments that a lot of these newer games have that I kind of wish they didn't. I understand why it's in there. It helps to make things easier for people. But even though they didn't have the auto regen in there, they did have these little fountains that you could go to that would refill your meters and stuff for you. And that was real good, eh?
And now, the bad.
Now, there's such a thing as having too much spoken content in your game, because if you voice everything, then you get into that habit of not knowing what's really important, and you think, okay, well, they're just talking about a goat, who cares, and I can skip that. But then you end up skipping something that was really important, because there's a lot of good gold dialogue in this game. There's a lot of fun moments, and I'm afraid I may miss some because I don't know which are the good dialogue bits that they wrote and which are the throwaway lines. Because if they just had those throwaway lines as something that were just read, straight up read, no voices, you read it, you click, that would have helped me know when something important or interesting was happening, because then it would start to speak. They did this really well in Final Fantasy XIV. They probably could have had a little bit more speaking in it, but they really did have a good balance of which lines you could just read through and which good important bits you'd want to pay attention to. This also would have saved them a little bit on their acting budget, and they probably could have done a little bit more with it, and they could have put that money to better use in other portions of the game, or that time could have been spent better in other areas of the game. Now, as I mentioned in my good, the save anywhere is also in my bad. The reason that is because there's not that reminder to save, because you get really into the game and you're totally sucked in. You're going, then all of a sudden you get into an unexpected battle that you lose, and boom, you're back to square one. It's good that they had a nice auto-save in there that saved you from too much of that frustration, but still, it's nice to have that reminder as well as being able to save anywhere. And those flying levels, they were a lot of fun, but they felt so short and just sort of tacked on. Like, I don't know why they put that in there, to be honest. Maybe they do more with it way later in the game. It just doesn't feel like it matters to the rest of the game. The combat, while fun, it was really clunky and hard to control when you had a whole lot of people on the screen. It was just you and maybe one or two other enemies. It wasn't so bad, but once you got like a huge group of 5 or 6 of them, it got too confusing and fists were flying, and because of the animation locks, it was just hard to focus and aim your attacks. Not only that, but the enemies didn't have any indicators or AoE little things on the ground telling you where something was going to happen. It didn't have to be all the time, but one place where it really would have been useful is that beginning fight there where the guy was exploding like a blood piñata. It really would have been nice to see where that was going to land, even if it was just a quick thing. Enough time for me to dodge out of the circle. There wasn't enough warning when that was supposed to be coming, and that got a little frustrating. Some of these really dinky little fetch quests that they made you do where, you know, okay, you talk to this person, now you go talk to this person, then you come back and talk to this person. It really would have been nice to have some sort of little indicator. That's something I miss from these newer games, where it would sort of let you know that, okay, for this quest, you want to go over here. I ended up spending so much time just wandering through that one village trying to find some of these people I needed to talk to. Now that adds to the realism of the game, I get that, but because they did that, I spent so much time mucking about trying to finish this stuff off, didn't know what was important to what wasn't, and I wish I could have gotten further into the game. And this dang game keeps pointing me in the wrong direction. Is it because that was the last way I was facing, or what was going on there? But like, even the one guy, he pointed. Okay, yeah, you want to go over here to go find the bandits. So I went the way he was pointing, even though I knew it was wrong. And yup, it was wrong. At least have them point in the right direction. Come on. Or when I went into that cave, there was a little bit of a cutscene. Then after the cutscene, it was finished, and then I was facing a direction. I'm like, okay, well, let's just run forward. And I went out of the cave. They seem to have a bit of a problem with character orientation a lot in this game. Like, when you clicked on somebody or talked to someone, sometimes you would face them, or sometimes when you clicked on items, you wouldn't actually face the item that you were clicking on. Like when I was reading that one book with my butt. Yeah, you could have just turned me around. A quick little pause animation. It would have been nice.
And now, the meh.
Yeah, what was with that? Like, why would you put the turning as your L and R buttons? That just makes zero sense. Maybe in a tank game, but I guess this isn't the first time these older games tried to treat your character like a tank. Like Dino Crisis. Double tap back? You'd think you would dash backwards or roll backwards. Nope, you dive forward right into the enemy like an idiot. Yeah, good job. Yeah, that whole delay of the text when you're talking to them, and then I kept thinking, oh, I gotta click to continue. Nope, I just skipped the next section of dialogue. Hooray! and Zhang and his ox thing that was going on there. I'm sure there was more to that story than we're gonna ever know. Going forward with games like this, I think I'm gonna have to be careful, because I don't feel that 6 hours was enough to get a good feel for such an immense game. A lot of other games, you can really get a good taste of it in that kind of a time frame, but this one, it really felt like I only scratched the surface. I hadn't really done a whole lot of quests, didn't know much about what was actually going on storyline wise. It felt like I was just barely getting going. So I may end up not doing another game that's this big and this long. We'll see. I'd like to actually hear your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. Let me know if you think that I did justice with this game, or you think I should, maybe stick to shorter, quicker, more action-packed games.
The verdict.
So, all in all, this was a really good game, but it had its flaws. The voice acting was great, and it was really good because this was such a story-focused game, and it was really oriented around the role-playing and the role that you would play within these scenarios and these towns. But unfortunately, it felt like the combat suffered a little bit. It's not the problem with the skills and the complexity, it's just the combat itself, the actions, the animation lock really felt like it wanted to be an action game, but it just couldn't do it for whatever reason. They needed to make this more action-oriented for the combat. So I guess in a way it's good that it was more story-focused, because then at least you had something more you could enjoy. But then that meant that the combat wasn't balanced quite well enough with the amount of story that you did. It really felt like I was sitting there for hours and hours just doing the running around, talking to people, clicking through menus, and then I would have a quick fight, and then it would be over and I'd be back to talking and going through menus again. Maybe that picks up as you get further into the game, but it took so bloody long that I didn't get anywhere. But man, some of these side stories were just gold. There was Fen and his ox. There was the fish-smelling sales lady. There was the dude with the Bay and his childhood sweetheart that was all crazy on him. This is some good stuff. And I almost missed some of it because I was getting so sick of all the dialogue. I just wanted to get through it. I'm glad I didn't though. And even though the combat was kind of clunky and a little bit frustrating, you did sort of get used to it. It's just, I wanted more out of it, and I'm sure I'm not the only one who'd feel that way. All in all though, I'd have to say this is a pretty great game. I think I'd give it about 7 out of 10 real nice fluffy snowballs, because I can see it only getting better the further I get into this game. And then with so many choices right off the hop at the beginning of the game, I see quite a bit of replay value too, because I did a balanced character, but I found that I really liked the magic. So I kind of want to start a new game with a more magic focused character. I think that would really change how I interact with it, and it might make the combat more fun. Well, I'm sorry to say that it's over. I'm so glad you could stay, but moreover, I'm willing to bet you got more important shit to do. So go home. Take off, ya hoser.
But wait, that's not all! In just a few short days, you will receive yet another episode absolutely free! By using the patented YouTube interface, you can have unlimited access to all previous videos in the series. Act now, and you can even be alerted when new episodes become available. Simply click 1-800-SUBSCRIBE. That's 1-800-SUBSCRIBE.
Previously Delicious is not responsible for any butt hurt, loss of time, indigestion, ruined childhoods, loss of civility, or shattered pink glasses that might arise from exposure to this product. Please, use at your own risk. You are a big boy and or girl, and no one has forced you to watch this. If someone has, your beef is with them. Seriously, folks, at this point, you should know how all this works. I'm only reminding you for the poops and laughs.